This company is being bled like a stuck pig, Mac, and I got a paper trail to prove it. Check this out. Take a look at this.
Jesus Christ,
That right there.
Hello everyone and welcome to Action RPG. I'm your host Aaron, and for today's video we're headed to the world of Last Epoch once again with Warlock Week Day 2. And what do I have for you today? The highly anticipated brand new passive tree for Warlock. Now, for any reason you did miss Day 1's video, I will link it in the description and at the end of this video where we covered the overall theming of the Warlock. We covered the 5 skill basics and we covered the 5 new curses. Very, very good video and informative. You should check it out if you missed it. All right, let's jump into this new, highly anticipated passive tree for Warlock. A master of the forbidden arts, tear into the essence of their foes, corrupting their spirits with relentless curses, necrotic magic, and flames to burn their flesh. Ooh. Now, the passive bonuses for Warlock: 5% more damage per curse on the target, and a flat 35% fire and necrotic resistance. Now, I was talking in yesterday's video about the importance of having as many curses on the target as possible, and you see that right at the beginning with the passive bonuses. Now, something I want to show you. You get a blanket 35% necrotic resistance. In the base Acolyte class, you're going to get an additional 40 if you take Forbidden Knowledge, and if you put 4 points into 5 points into Unnatural, you get an additional 20. Which means going into Warlock, you will have 95% necrotic resistance. And this will matter, as you will see later as we go through Warlock Week. You want as much necrotic resistance as possible. Okay, let's get into this new passive tree. Now, when I first got my hands on Warlock, the first node I looked at, my jaw dropped. Any Necromancer fans out there? Check this out. Chaos Flames, increased fire damage, increased ignite chance, increased necrotic damage, increased damned chance, and you can put 8 points into this passive node. And there is 3 magic words at the bottom here. Applies to minions. That means all Fire Necro builds, all Golemancer, all Lazy Necros are just getting a blanket buff to their damage and their dots from this singular node. Absolutely huge. And instead of being able to only put 3 points or 5 points, it's an 8-point node. Absolutely awesome. I just wanted to start with that. So let's kind of just jump over the passive board. You have Soul Eater, increased mana regen, and you can regen mana based upon how many curses are on the target. So for example, if you had 5 curses, you would have a 65% chance to get some mana back, and you can affect the cooldown of this because it has a 3-second cooldown. Occultist Mind, intelligence, and 5 points invested. However much intelligence you have, you get mana. You got 100 intelligence. This would give you 100 mana. Very powerful node. Unholy Torment. This is base damage for your spells and increased area. And then we're going to jump up here to Spirit Leech. This is a node that almost everyone is going to take. This is just life leech and leech based upon curses on the target. You got to make sure you are hitting cursed enemies. Okay? Now, let's talk through our first cluster and see our first passive skill. All right? We're going to look at these 3 right here. Spiteful Decay, increased damage over time and base health, and more damage over time to cursed enemies, and that is multiplicative. Then you come right here, Cauldron of Blood. This is base bleed chance, and if you invest 5 points, you get access to Bleed Overload. When you cast a physical skill and enemies within 15 meters have a combined 25 or more stacks of bleed, you cast Rip Blood up to 5 targets and gain Bleed Overload. What is Bleed Overload, Aaron? Great question. Bleed Overload grants you 15% more physical damage over time to bosses and moving enemies. And you can further boost this up to 6 points by Crimson Favors. This is an increase to your physical damage, increased bleed chance with Rip Blood, and with 4 points invested, your Rip Blood's hits have a chance to bleed enemies while you have Bleed Overload. You cast Rip Blood at nearby enemies each second. So it just triggers over and over again. This is our first cluster, and this is our first skill, Bleed Overload. And remember, the first half of this tree is available to Lich, and it's available to Necromancer. Moving down to the bottom for some survivability. So on Harrowing Armor, this is base armor, base health, and more damage per curse on target. You got 5 curses on the target, you're gonna get 15% more armor. And you can get 7 points on Dark Protections. This is ward per second, and again, 5 points invested, less damage per curse on the target. 5 curses on the target, 10% less damage taken. More survivability that is definitely going to be needed, Necromancer, inside of the Warlock. Now, any channeling fans out there or anybody that wants to use Ghost Flame, so you have Ward of Mouth. This is ward decay threshold, ward gained on kill, and ward per second per intelligence while channeling. You can also get ward decay threshold per, ready, 1% necrotic resistance. This is the first time in Warlock Week you're going to see a buff based upon your necrotic resistance. And remember, you're going to be starting at 95% if you take it the right way. And points to vitality will further buff that. And then you can put 8 points into Doom Herald, which is less damage taken while channeling and more damage to damned while channeling. I know this is a huge just data dump for the passive tree, but don't worry, I've got some stuff to show off. Moving on to our last 2 nodes that are available to Lich, Necromancer, and Warlock, and this takes us over to Poison Overload. So you saw our Bleed Overload, let's talk Poison Overload with Vile Tide. When you cast a damage over time skill and enemies within 15 meters have a combined 25 or more stacks of poison, you gain Poison Overload for 12 seconds and cast Defiling Nova, which expands outward, poisoning enemies it hits. Now, I probably should have said right at the beginning of the video that everything is subject to change until we have 1.0. Okay, so tinkering is likely going to happen with these. All right, now let's take a look at Poison Overload. Grants you 4% poison penetration per stack of poison on the target, up to 100 stacks, and Defiling Nova has its own skill tooltip. So it is a sub-skill, and you could further buff this with Rancid, which is ward on potion use and mana gained on potion use, while you have Poison Overload using a potion spread stacks of your poison from all enemies within 15 meters up to 2 nearby enemies. So this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna put some points in. We'll take that, we'll take that, and let's go test out some Poison Overload. We are now at the training dummies, and we are going to trigger our Poison Overload. Now, what you need to do is have 25 stacks of poison, be within 15 meters, and use a damage over time skill. So what we are using is Hungering Souls. And we are going to shoot, 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 and bam. You see that? The entire screen turned green, and we got this little icon right here, Poison Overload. You have 4% poison penetration per stack of poison on the target, up to 100 stacks, and that is 12 seconds. So you could trigger this every 12 seconds. That is a new skill built in to the passive tree. Very, very cool. Moving over to the Warlock only nodes on the right side of the passive tree. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to cover the outside nodes first, and then we will take care of the more complicated skill nodes in the center. Now, the first node we're going to look at is Wither. Withering chance on hit, 20%, and you can put 5 points in it, which means you have a guaranteed 100% withering chance with 5 points invested, and you get a multiplicative less damage taken from withered enemies. Again, lot more survivability inside of Warlock. There is so many good nodes with Warlock that you're going to have to figure out what to give up because you're going to want everything. Now, what is Withering? Each stack of Withering increases damage taken from Cursed by 10%, 6% against players and 20% on bosses, lasts 3 seconds, and can stack 20 times. So far with the build guides that I've been working on, this is a must-have. Moving over to the right, Encroaching Darkness. When you directly cast a curse skill, you also inflict a number of enemies around the target location with Anguish. And again, if you don't know what Anguish is, this is a new skill for new curse for Warlock. Check out Warlock Week Day 1 video. So this is a really easy way, honestly, even if you only put 1 point in, to ensure you are inflicting a curse on that boss fight. Cruising down, spell base damage for your curses, 3 points allocated. Hitting a boss or a rare enemy also triggers Anguish on them. So know that there are 2 nodes, one right here, Unholy Torment, and Duskbringer, that you can boost the base damage of your curses. We are now going to pop up to the top with Body. This is a blanket 10 points if you want 10 points of intelligence and 10 points of vitality. That's a good one too. Moving over to Chaotic Strikes, double damage chance and double damage per curse on the target chance. There are multiple ways to boost double damage with the Warlock. And again, you'll find out more throughout the week for Warlock Week. And you could further bring this with Critical Strike Multiplier and 3 points invested, Critical Strike Multiplier with Chaotic Strikes. Boost up that crit multiplier. 5 points in Aspect of Death. Now this one, you are going to hear a lot about Warlock Week Day 7. I'm trying to crack it. Aspect of Death. When you have increased health, and you deal more damage multiplicative per stack for each negative ailment on you, up to a maximum of 90. Increased health and increased damage per negative ailment on you. The 3-point bonus, you inflict damned on yourself when you and your minions kill a target or take a hit. Yes, putting damned on yourself or any negative ailment is going to boost your damage. A Curse Seer, increased cast speed for curses, and the 3-point bonus. When you're below 35 health, you will cleanse all curses off you. And how many curses are on you, you will gain ward from it. This is kind of like your fail-safe if you're putting too many negative ailments on yourself. And I know we're kind of bouncing around everywhere right now. Bleeding Crone. You have a chance to gain haste for 2 seconds when you kill a cursed enemy or hit a cursed boss or rare enemy. You want to be quick, you could take Bleeding Crone. I'm telling you, there's so many good nodes for Warlock. And the last node before we move into the center. Vessel of Chaos. Increased damage over time, and you deal more damage over time, multiplicative for each active ailment overload. What is an active ailment overload? You've already seen a couple of them with Poison Overload and with Bleed Overload. So those are all the outside nodes that are Warlock only. Literally, all of them are good. The haste node I never take because it's like, all it's going to do is make me run fast. But if you have great survivability and damage, it's just going to push your clear speed. Either way, all of them are good. Let's move into the center, starting with Chains of Ruin. Oh, you know where this is going. This boosts your damn chance when you cast a necrotic skill and enemies within 15 meters have a combined 20 stacks or more of damned. You chain all damned enemies to the ground for 2 seconds and gain Damned Overload for 12 seconds. Damned Overload grants you 1% more damned damage to enemies per 2% missing health on you and 2% missing health on the target. And you can further push your Damned Overload by Grasping Damnation. Increases chain's duration, increased dam's duration, and the 5-point bonus. When you have damned overload, you have a chance to chain nearby damned enemies to the ground each second. You want to see some necrotic chains? I am extremely excited to show you this next one. We are moving down from chains to Infernal Lash, which gives you base ignite chance, and with 5 points invested, when you cast a fire skill and enemies within 15 meters have a combined 25 or more stacks of ignite, you strike up to 3 nearby ignited enemies with Flame Whip and gain ignite overload for 12 seconds. Flame Whip has its own sub-skill tooltip, and Ignite Overload grants you 1% more fire damage to ignited enemies per 20% global ignite chance for fire skills. In the Warlock, passive tree grants you access to Flame Whip skill, which can be further boosted through Scorched Reach, which gives you base fire damage. And when you have Ignite Overload and you kill an ignited enemy or hit an ignited boss or a rare enemy, you cast Flame Whip at nearby enemies. Enjoy the new skill, Flame Whip. Now, if you thought we were done, if you thought it couldn't get any better, you would be incorrect. We still have 2 nodes to look at. Moving over to the Ashen one, which gives you increased necrotic damage, increased elemental damage, and with 5 points invested, when you gain Ignite Overload or Damned Overload, all ignited and damned enemies within 15 meters are inflicted with Witch Fire for 12 seconds. Aaron, what in the world is Witch Fire? How am I going to remember all this? I don't know. Witch Fire is an ailment that deals 300 fire and 300 necrotic damage over 12 seconds. It cannot stack. And you can further boost Witch Fire, which if you want to take Witch Fire, this node is required. Domain. Witch Fire that you inflict deals more damage, multiplicative, so this is how you scale the damage of your Witch Fire, per global chance to ignite with fire skills and per global chance to inflict damned with necrotic skills. Additionally, when you have Ignite or Damned Overload, your hits spread Witch Fire to a number of enemies within 10 meters. All right, everyone, that's going to do it for Warlock Week Day 2. You should now have a great understanding of the passive tree. You know the theming of the class, you know all the new curses, and you have the generics on the skill. For Warlock Week Day 3, tomorrow we're going to be doing a full deep dive, and I'm going to show you what is possible with one of the new Warlock skills, Ghost Flame, which has some of the best particle effects and VFX I have seen inside of Last Epoch, and it is a very fun channeling skill. So that is tomorrow. Couple of asks at the end of the video. Ask number 1, I'm hoping today is the day I have earned your subscription. I'm hoping today is the day you make the decision to push that little red button. I would really appreciate it, but of course, only if you think I've earned it. Ask number 2, check out my Patreon. Is the best way to support into the future. We have game night coming up. You got access to the VIP lounge. You get access to the custom content. You get access to live streaming audio and video. It is the best way to support. First link in the description. And don't forget, over Warlock Week, I will be live on Aaron Action RPG on Twitch, playing Last Epoch and answering as many questions as I can on Warlock. So come by tonight if you want to chat or just hang out. I'm done. Hopefully you were entertained or at least learned something. Aaron, out.